The second question, the second problem which we're gonna discuss, which we're gonna stay in touch with, that's the problem of euthanasia. And as I have mentioned to you, that's the interconnection between the legal state and bioethical, and also actually the psychological state of the person. So this means the personal and social psychology also play an important role in understanding of the euthanasia. That's why get broader vision on this problem of the euthanasia right now. So, euthanasia has been defined. This means the definition which is not, let's say, so I can mention implemented by everyone, understood by everyone, but it's can be defined as a deliberate act undertaken by one person with the intention of ending the life of another person to relieve that person's suffering. Of course, here what we can see, first of all, that's actually deliberation act. You remember the deliberation procedure, and as the part of the ethical problem, and here the problem of euthanasia is to make this deliberation act. So it means to construct such an circumstances to make the medical service which can provide this vision on the right of the life end. So also, you see, it's play an important role to see interpersonal relations. Here, maybe some will see one more mistake, that sometimes it happened that person couldn't decide concerning the right on the life of right of the end of life by him or herself, because the problem of the consciousness also coming at the problem of the as the result of the disease. And also it will be the result of interconnection of the family members. And also here we are at this definition implementing such a thing, and you understood this as the person who have chosen the route, the path of the doctor, the path of the physician, the problem of the person's suffering. I have mentioned to you about the psychological and also here physiological and the anatomical changes. So this means it's the problem of the suffering getting the crucial role at the understanding why it happened that euthanasia is getting increasingly important for the some of the discussion at the European and American society. Euthanasia may be voluntary, involuntary, or non-voluntary, depending on the following contexts of the way how euthanasia happened. The first, the competence of the recipient of the euthanasia. Here, the competency based on the knowledge and based on the way how one's understood the further changes of the personhood, further changes of this state of awareness. The second thing, the second depending point is whether or not the act is consistent with the recipient's wishes. So this means if this are known by the recipient of the euthanasia. Here also the problem of interchanging, problem of communication between the patient and the doctors, patients and the physicians, medical servants. And it's important to understand that the wishes itself, it's getting the result of intrapersonal communication with, if we can say, the God nature, because for some of the people actually that's the one of the biggest value for the personhood the life is. And of course the third thing which we can mention, whether or not the recipient is aware that euthanasia is to be performed. So this means understood and actually going to make such an act as the life end to him or herself. Assisted suicide has been defined as the act of intentionally killing oneself with the assistance of another who deliberately provides the knowledge, means, or both of the knowledge and means. So this means this act of intentionally killing actually is going on by the assisted procedure. Actually is going on by the definition which have been accepted, as you can see, by the legal system and also accepted by the professional community. In a lot of countries, as I have mentioned to you, not such a big amount of countries have been adopted it at the national level. As the example, the Canada, at the North America, Colombia, the South America, Spain, actually, that's very interesting. The Catholic-based country, but it's adopted it on the national level, and Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg, Benelux countries, they are actually on the front of a lot of changes, a lot of deliberation, and that was one of the example of the deliberation procedure. A lot of in other countries and in the Asia also. So it happened to you that this is supposed to be adopted by the legal system, adopted by the system of the communication at the professional community level of the act and the procedure of such an act of intentionally killing. It's supposed to be strictly and step by step described by the legislative base, by the legislative community, by those acts which have supposed to be implemented, and such a procedure is supposed to be made. States all over the world, nations all over the world are very different, and it depends on the religious, it depends on the national traditions which we have in different countries, we have in different cultures, and a lot of debate, and the societies all over the world debate recently the question of whether physicians and other healthcare professionals should in certain circumstances participate in intentionally bringing about the death of a patient, and whether these practices should be accepted by society as a whole. Here once more the connection between the social adoption, social general vision on the point of view concerning the euthanasia, and also the participation of the both sides of the euthanasia procedure, from physicians and healthcare professionals from one end, and the patient and one's family and patient's family at this procedure, in case if patient could not decide by him or herself. So such an acceptance of the society, such a diversity of the point of view based on the actual tradition, based on the level of understanding which were implemented at the previous generation. And the problem of the euthanasia became the bioethical problems, and the same as bioethics started only in the 70s. It became the end of the 19th of, that means the end of the 90s years of the 20th century, this means the end of the 20th century and beginning of the 21st century. Right now it's broadly spread, and a lot of things have been done, of course, by the changing of the mind, by changing of the social construction on the problem of the euthanasia, by the film, by the cinema productions, and in Hollywood and in Bollywood a lot of things have been mentioned as the part of the euthanasia. It's becoming not so strange for the people's, for the society understanding. What will happen in the future? Nobody knows, right? Let's see this construction of the debates in different countries is going on. So you can follow the way how it formulated, the way how it have been understood by different countries, by the different community and levels of this community. There is considerable disagreement about whether euthanasia and assisted suicide are ethically distinct from decision to forego life-sustaining treatments, and the issue has formed the basis of a number of legal acts where there is a strict definition of forego life-sustaining treatment procedure and the way of the implemented on the end of life. So it's quite interesting that the legal procedure is based on this communication that the professionals, and especially professionals in the biomedical ethics, because the unity of the forms, unity of the communication between the legislative power and the professional sphere, professional circle of the ideas. That's the constructive problem of the mission of the bioethics in the contemporary world right now. At the heart of such a debate, at the heart of such a communication between legal centers and the centers of the professional community in bioethics particularly, is the ethical significance given to the intentions of those performing this act, this system of the euthanasia and assisted suicide. Of course, it will be done by the physicians, it's supposed to be done by the medical servants. And those people who are making this also supposed to be protected in the future, because a lot of things happen on the psychological level. A lot of things happen at the psychological level of on the families of those people who have been done the euthanasia or assisted suicide, and those who actually made this procedure. And a lot of examples you can see at the system of implementation of the bioethics procedure in Canada and elsewhere in the Europe, for example. Supporters of euthanasia and assisted suicide reject such an argument, which is popular at the controversial level, that there is an ethical distinction between these acts and the acts of foregoing life-sustaining treatment. And they explain it as the suffering, the procedure of the suffering. You remember I have mentioned to you about this problem of which supposed to be described by the personal psychology and the social psychology itself, because it influences also the family members of foregoing life-sustaining treatment person, and of course the way how this social psychology influence the problem of the suffering. The supporters of euthanasia they claim instead that euthanasia and assisted suicide are consistent with the right of the patient to make autonomous choice, right? You remember that's one of the main model, autonomous choice, main principle of the model, autonomous choice, about the time and the manner of their own death. That means the death for the supporters of the euthanasia, it's the part of the procedure of the life, the part of the procedure of the life system. So it's important at this discussion to see the reasons of supporters and those who are protecting life from the assisted suicide. Opponents, that means let's come to this side. the opponents of euthanasia and assisted suicide claim that death is a predictable consequence of the morally justified withdrawal of life-sustaining treatments only in cases where there is a fatal underlying condition, and that it's this condition, not the action of withdrawing treatment, that causes death. And you're supposed to follow the structure of the opponents of euthanasia vision. First thing, that the problem of the differentiation between the system of life-sustaining treatments and also the problem of fatality, fatal circumstances for the person to change the status, to come to use this right on the right to end of life. So this problem of the fatal circumstances actually supposed to be implemented at the legislative procedure, opponents of the euthanasia said. And of course it's supposed to, maybe at the first level of implementing euthanasia, some exceptions from the general law, because it's based, such an exception is supposed to be based on this fatal underlying conditions, fatal circumstances for the personhood. Also, we can say that opponents concern that the acceptance of euthanasia may contribute to an increasingly cautious attitude toward private killing in society. It does not suppose to, according to the opponents, and of course it's reasonable for those who are talking about the ethical procedure, it does not supposed to be so easy. It's not supposed to make this like a service. So the private killing, the problem of the private killing have been described also in the end of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century. There were examples even in Nazi Germany, when there were special services of those who are making euthanasia. So that's why this problem have been discussed, this problem have been implemented at the different genesis of the society itself. There is also disagreement about whether euthanasia and assisted suicide should rightly be considered medical procedure, should rightly be considered as the part of the medicine, as the part of the medical procedure. Why they are making such a statement? Because you remember, one of the main principles of the medicine, one of the main principle of medical care throughout the history, throughout the genesis of the history, was to protect the life system. Although physicians must render care necessary for their patients' survival, they are usually not bound to provide treatment that in good faith they consider futile or ineffective to sustain their patients' well-being or capacity to function at a conscious, aware level. So this type of the influential for this type of the idea influential for the contemporary time. It's important to those people who are making the opponents for the suicide and assisted suicide, or euthanasia. They are making these examples. They are making this procedure of the providing treatment in a good form, in a good faith, as the important one for the changing of its position. For instance, patients who remain in the permanent or persistent vegetative state may have means of nutrition and hydration withdrawn when death is predicted to result. A small but potentially growing number of jurisdictions allow physicians to comply with component patients' persistent requests that their unbearable pain be revealed by terminal means. So this means with help of the treatment, with help of such a procedure of the healing which recover the problem of the suffering. Here also the opponents of euthanasia, the opponents of the assisted suicide, they are making the statement concerning the way how the person understood actually this problem of the pain. A concern regarding approaching euthanasia and medically assisted suicide through criminal law is that enforcement may be ineffective. Physicians may be justified in increasing medications for pain control as patients' relief from pain at given dosage levels decreases, until the toxic level is predictably reached and is the precipitating cause of the death. That's why the criminal law also supposed to describe the procedure of the euthanasia not as the and not to be followed as the criminal punishment. So what we can make the conclusion that we have the human dignity as the main structure of euthanasia, and it's connected with the human rights, and here you see the legal procedure which have been implemented. We're supposed to restore proper physical functioning by treating if we have the vegetative person, if those who are getting the medical support at the end of the life. And we're supposed to restore proper physical functioning by the treating in such a way that the person would not be aware of the state of the healing, the state of the death itself.